So now we've entered the fall of the Soviet Union and fully into the Yeltsin presidency. A presidency or leadership marked with corruption and kind of crony capitalism, the birthplace of what we see in modern day Russia. And then there's a figure lingering in the background, and that would be Vladimir Putin. So, can you explain their dynamic and relationship and how that kind of created or opened the path for eventual Putin's rise to power?
Yeah, the the situation in Russia got very, very bad. Uh, as I was mentioning, the national income fell by 50%. That didn't happen even under Nazi occupation. Those people who acquired the property through dishonest means, they stripped they stripped the factories and enterprises and stashed the money in accounts offshore. They many needed services, including medical services, were neglected, and there began to be a catastrophic and even atmospheric, I would say, death rate. People began dying in incredible numbers. Russia soon had the highest death rate of of a of any country that was not at war.
Was this due to just
This was due to disease, accidents, crime, general despair. Demographers have a category which they call surplus mortality. By that, they mean the number of deaths that could not have been predicted on the basis of pre-existing trends. And in Russia during the 1990s, the number of surplus deaths was 6 million. People were just dying literally like flies. There was an article in Novaya Gazeta, which is a Russian newspaper, an interview with a gravedigger who was interviewed in a new cemetery plot outside of Moscow that had just been opened up. And he said to the journalist, he said, "Do you see these graves? These are all young men. We never had that before. A lot of the tremendous amount of mortality in the 35 to 50 male age group. Male life expectancy fell to something like 57. The only other place where you could find such a low male life expectancy was in Somalia, where there was a civil war going on. So it stood to reason that people were very, very discontented with Yeltsin. There was another incident I can recall, which I myself was a witness to. It took place in Vladivostok, where I was working on my second book. And the bay had frozen over, but the ice was unsafe. Nonetheless, people were going out onto the ice to fish. And as a result, many of them fell into the ice broke. They fell into the bay. They had to be rescued. In some cases, they were killed. So, the police warned fisher people not to go out on the ice. The ice was not safe, particularly after one case in which a person was drowned. But nonetheless, the next day, fishermen were all out on the ice, just as if nothing had happened. And the police came and they chased them off the ice, except for one old man who refused to leave. He was just sitting there fishing, and he was some distance out, and they were calling to him repeatedly and was saying, "Get off the ice." He said, "It's dangerous. You can fall into the bay. We can't rescue." Finally, they went out and got him, and dragged him back to the shore. And they asked him, why is it that you ignored our warnings? You understand that you can die this way. And he said, better to be dead than to live like I'm living now. And the material conditions were just absolutely horrific. And under those conditions, it was very unlikely that Yeltsin and his corrupt family would avoid prison once his term was up. And Yeltsin began basically a search for someone who he could rely on to protect him, and his family was the epicenter of corruption in Russia. And they chose Putin, and they chose well, because he himself had been a very big bribe taker in St. Petersburg, where he was deputy mayor. There were 2 criminal cases that had been started against him. And he had demonstrated in his relationship with Anatoly Sobchak, the corrupt mayor of St. Petersburg, whom he helped escape when Sobchak was from Russia, when Sobchak was about to be arrested, that he was loyal toward those who were his superiors. And so Yeltsin decided on Putin, but the device for making sure that Putin could then be elected president was the bombing of the apartment buildings in Russia in 1999. In the summer of 1999, I was in Moscow, and everyone understood that it was very tense atmosphere. Everyone feared that something big was going to happen. That it was understood that there were various rumors. Some people thought that there would be a war between criminal gangs that would be used as an excuse for declaring martial law. Others thought maybe they would blow up some government buildings, perhaps try to blow up the Interior Ministry building. There were various hypotheses, and then suddenly residential buildings began to be blown up, and they were blamed on the Chechens. This was used as an excuse to start a new war in Chechnya. The war was victorious, at least in the initial phases, and that rallied support behind the new leader, Vladimir Putin. September 8th, Yeltsin had a telephone conversation with Bill Clinton in which he said, there's going to be a new leader. It's Vladimir Putin. You'll like him. He's going to work well with the United States. He's a reliable man, a very good man, and he's going to win. Now, Yeltsin's popularity rating at that time was 2%. Putin's popularity rating at that time was 2%. How he could be so sure that Putin was going to win, that's a mystery. But on September 9th, the following day, the first apartment building in Moscow on Guryanov Street was blown up in the middle of the night, and 100 people were killed and hundreds were wounded. Those bombings terrorized the whole country. People organized patrols at night to make sure that no one was trying to put a bomb in the building. And Chechens were blamed for the bombing, even though they denied having anything to do with it. But on a few weeks later, another bomb was found in a building in the city of Ryazan, southeast of Moscow. And that bomb was identical to the bombs that were used to blow up the buildings in Moscow and other cities. And the persons who put the bomb in the building were caught. And they turned out to be not Chechen terrorists, but agents of the FSB. Now, the FSB then claimed that this was a training exercise. to test the people for their vigilance. But the country was already in a state of panic. The last thing they needed was a false alarm. In fact, that bombing had been timed for the beginning of the invasion of Chechnya, because the following day they began bombing Grozny, the capital of Chechnya. But Putin's popularity soared. The Russians did not ask any questions, and what's worse, the Americans did not ask any questions. Not only did they not ask any questions, but they helped in the cover-up. Madeleine Albright, who was then the Secretary of State, was asked by Jesse Helms, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. She was asked, do we have any proof that it was the Chechens who bombed those buildings? And she said, no, none has been produced. She then was asked, well, if the Chechens didn't carry out these bombings, who did? And she refused to answer. She said that we are against terrorism in all its forms, as if that was in any way a surprise. With that, she saved, in effect, Putin's presidency. He hadn't been elected yet. And she became complicit in the cover-up of those bombings.